Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Personal Finance Playbook. I'm your host, Jack Wang. Taking care of older relatives. It's not a subject that is easy or fun to talk about, but it is an issue that's full of emotion and stress and can often lead to family arguments and really awkward holiday dinners. To help share tips you can use, today we have John Younger and Mary Zabian, both of assisted living locators. John has helped hundreds of families go through the process of finding the right facility for their relatives. He tours and interviews assisted living facilities throughout the region to understand the different amenities and features of each. Outside of work, he's heavily involved with Special Olympics, as well as being on the boards of Amesbury Council on Aging and the Friends of the Danvers Council on Aging. My other guest is Mary Zabian, the owner of Assisted Living Locators of Metro West, Massachusetts. She grew up in the Berkshires and moved to the Boston area after college to serve seniors as they transitioned to various assisted living facilities. Mary has dedicated her entire career to guiding seniors and their families on their assisted living journey. So say that fast bunch time. She brings 6 years of experience of working with some of the largest independent assisted living and memory care facilities throughout New England. Welcome to both of you to the show. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having us, Jack. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's get right into this. So for a question for both of you. So help our audience understand the different levels of care, right? Because oftentimes I feel like that assisted living and nursing homes are often confused, but help our audience understand sort of what they actually entail.
Right, so you've got different levels of care options that are out there: independent living, assisted living with memory care, and then there's the nursing home. And what happens is people get confused between assisted living and nursing homes and what they actually offer and what they do. So the easiest way to think about it is that a nursing home is more of a hospital type setting, more of a higher medical type setting, people who need feeding tubes or some type of G tubes, or they're bedridden. So that's a big difference because the nursing homes are more medical oriented than the assisted living places.
Right. Assisted living can help with personal care, bathing, dressing, using the bathroom, managing medication, and nursing home, like John said, is much more medical, kind of the closest thing to a hospital-like setting.
Okay, all right. So I just want to make sure I understand, because I think what you say makes sense. So really, if someone needs more for the hands-on care, for the lack of a better term, or more intensive care, that would typically be more of a nursing home. Assisted living is just more of the day-to-day, get a little bit help with the day-to-day things. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes and no. So assisted livings can do a pretty high level of care depending on the community. So they're not all created equally, even though they're all licensed by the state. Some do a much higher level of care than others, like a two-person assist or a Hoyer lift or things like that. Having a skilled need doesn't always mean you need a nursing home or a skilled nursing facility. There are a lot of ways to get those services in assisted living, and it all comes down to what resources you have or what community you choose. But a nursing home, is really meant, like John named some of the things that assisted livings can't do, like a G tube or a feeding tube, something like that.
It's all about quality of life. A lot of the assisted livings, as Mary said, do go up to that higher level where it's a two-person assist or a mechanical lift. What they can't do is the G tubes, the feeding tubes, the medical part. That's what they can't do.
Okay. And I know both of you spend a lot of time touring facilities, right? And because you're in the industry, you also get the insider tour and you see all different features and all the different layouts of the different facilities. But help our audience understand just the variety of some of the different features that you'd see, because to me, not being into your industry, I almost think of it like hotels. Like some hotels have indoor pools, some have outdoor pools, and some don't have pools at all, right? Which is probably not something that you think about, but I think of it in those terms. So what are some of the different things that you tend to see?
Yeah, so all of the communities generally offer things like meals, housekeeping, transportation to doctor's appointments and whatnot. Typically the model is that they have staff in the building 24 hours. Independent living, maybe not, but with assisted living and memory care, almost certainly. Some communities are more amenity based than others, so you have some that have more of like a high-end country club like feel, where they have different dining rooms, they have a gym, they have a pool, they have all kinds of different common spaces, movie theaters, things like that. And some don't. It all depends on what's important to a family. Some families really care about mom having access to a pool and a gym because she has always exercised and that's super important to her, or a lecture hall or whatever it is, whereas other communities may not have as much of the fancy common spaces, but they can do a higher level of care for the family. So there's a whole range of amenities, and it all depends on what's important to you, and that's where John and I can help kind of narrow things down.
It's really all about the care. Mm-hmm. You get through what I love to bring clients through places, and they're beautiful, and carpeting and chandeliers, and the ooh and the ah happens, and the daughters and the sons are oohing and ahhing, and then I say, okay, that chandelier is not going to take care of your mother. So let's talk about the care levels and the number of residents to staffing, the hours that the nurses are there. And to get back to what Mary commented on, there's 250 places that we work with. And how do you choose? And they kind of develop and design the environment that they want, they being the assisted livings. They can all do the same thing. They can all go A to Z in their care. But some of them choose not to, maybe to stop in the middle, because they just don't want to or aren't able to pay for or provide that more than one person assist.
Okay.
There are others who just will run the whole gamut because they can afford to, and they can bring the staffing in to take care of folks who need those two people to help them get up and going in the morning. But most importantly, it's all about the care.
So let me ask you a follow-on question on that. Because I can imagine going on a tour and the oohs and the ahs and the shiny new facility or the nice chandelier or the big dining room or whatever, which, Mary, like you said, is important to some people. But let's talk a little bit about the care aspect. So what are some of the things that families or that you look for when you're going on these tours? Because after all, the quality of care is important, and if you just flat out ask people, oh, how's the care? Of course, they're going to say, oh, we do a great job, right? So that's really not a disqualifying question. But what are some of those things that perhaps families really should look for when they're evaluating a place?
Right. My favorite thing to point out is, as we're walking around, is what are the caregivers doing? Mm-hmm. Are they engaging with the residents? Or are they in a corner on their cell phones or listening to music or kibitzing with themselves and talking with them and away from the residents? So engagement of the staff with the residents is incredibly important.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think I always tell families, we go with them on the tours, which I think is really helpful to them, because when you look at a few places, they all start to mix together and you forget what questions to ask, and you're there and it's so overwhelming, and we're there as advocates for them. But I always tell people that you kind of get a feeling when you're in the right kind of place for your mom or dad. You can look at the residents and see, do I see my mom here? Do I see my dad here? If your mom is in a wheelchair or needs a lot more care, do you see people who look similar to your mom being well cared for? Or if your mom doesn't use any kind of walker or cane and she's super active and she's going to the gym, does it seem vibrant enough for her? So there are so many situations, and every person is so unique, and I think by us helping them even visiting the communities with them is really helpful to be able to point out those different things that they might not be thinking of.
Okay. Yeah, so that makes sense, right? Because after all, they are going to be living there, so you want to like your neighbors, right? Effectively, right? Interesting. Okay. So what are some of the, so let me ask you this question, two-part. What are some of the most common questions that you get from families when you start this process with them? And then what are some questions that you wish that they would ask but don't?
Right. How's the food?
Is that the most common?
Food is very important. How's the food, and how much does it cost to live there? Those are the most common questions.
I think people are really focused on, can this community care for my mom forever? Will she have to move again? And so, sometimes we're there to help understand what the compromises might be. A community that might be able to care for your mom most certainly through end of life may not look as vibrant as a community that focuses mostly on independent living. So helping families understand, why things look a certain way or why things are set up a certain way, and helping them understand that their mom may be in a totally different place 5-10 years from now.
So, so I would imagine that might not be something that families really think about. So here's a question. So do you find that families typically look based on what they need currently? Or do you find that families have that foresight to sort of think about, okay, well, this place meets, has what my elderly relative needs, but also has X, Y, and Z down the road? What do you find more commonly?
I think people want both, but I think that perception is everything. People see their parents much differently than, us as an objective person see them. Like, you were raised by your parents, you picture them as being so strong and they always took care of you, and now you're taking care of them, and it's a very difficult role reversal. And so sometimes, families don't have the best understanding of what their mom needs now or what the trajectory might be later. So that's where we come in to kind of consult with them. If your mom has Parkinson's or dementia or whatever it is, it's really important to have a place that can not only suit her needs now, but 6 months from now, a year from now, because things can change so quickly. So I think most people don't want to have to move again. But at the end of the day, it's about where their priorities fall. If you're really want a place with a ton of amenities and things now where mom can live for the next 5 years, but when she needs more care, move again. Some places have that on the same campus or nearby or whatever it is. So we're here to be the expert in what those options are for now and later.
Okay.
And this is the point where we sit with the families and ask them those questions. What's important? What did your mom, dad do when they were growing up? Librarians, Harvard professors, lawyers, real estate agents, because that will help them pick the right place. And what we're doing by interviewing them and talking with them, there's also medical issues, location issues, financial issues.
Right.
We get all that information so that we're recommending only 2 or 3 places, and we're guiding them into those 2 or 3 places. Because going on the internet or just driving around in your vehicle, stopping in a place, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Not my favorite term, but it's true. You don't know what you don't know.
So on that, you mentioned sort of, information on the internet, right? And so, of course, the joke, I think there was a commercial years ago on TV, right? Like, if it's on the internet, it must be true or something like that. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you hear from families about assisted living facilities?
I think my favorite story, which is probably a misconception as well, part of our biggest job is to set expectations. So I had a family that moved into memory care, and they were paying $9,000 a month for memory care. And what happened was, mom ran out of paper products, Kleenex, toilet paper. And the family just got really angry because they were expecting, for $9,000 a month, I want toilet paper. So those are some of the expectation type of things that we set in the it's an apartment. It's your home. You're renting. So you're providing what you would do, provide in your own apartment. So that's the reasoning behind, but people don't know that because they don't know to ask that question. That's what we're here for. We're here to help them with their toilet paper.
I like it. Nice, nice.
Among other things.
Oh, among other things, exactly.
So funny.
That'll make it into like the show highlights. Right? Like we help with toilet paper. Yeah, got it.
So funny.
How would you answer that? And hopefully something different than toilet paper.
So I think a lot of places look the same online. You Google assisted living near me, and all these places will come up. And they all look so beautiful. It's a picture of an empty living room and an empty dining room and beautiful decor or whatever it is. But what it doesn't tell you is what the people are like there, because a community is only as good as the staff that are working in it, the residents that are there, and every person's experience is really subjective to what's important to them. So there might be 5 assisted livings on the same street, but they're all so different. One is better for someone who has higher medical needs, or one has a lot of other professors who live there that would be really great for your dad's social life or whatever it is. So we are in the communities all the time. We know the ins and outs. We know the staff. We know, who can do what and who has the right apartment, who has the right amenities. And so, rather than going on the internet and calling all these places, you don't remember the last person you called and all the information is kind of mixed together. We're here to be like that one contact for you and really help you sort all of that out. You might see places, I always tell families, you might Google something and say, well, why didn't Mary mention that? And you just have to ask, and I can tell you why I didn't mention it or what my thought process was. And, and then I'm happy to work with them and decide, well, they know their mom better than I do. Maybe it's worth going to look at that place or whatever it is. So,
Okay.
It's I find families are constantly overwhelmed by the internet and going into a community, and they hear one thing here but not at the other place, and they don't know how to kind of streamline the process.
Right. And I do want to come back to that sense of overwhelm in a minute, but John, you mentioned something that could have just caused our audience to just fall out of a chair, and I was mentioning price. But I want to set expectations,
Yeah.
right? So I know before we got into the studio, we were talking a little bit about this. I know we've known each other for a while. It's not the number. I mean, the number can seem scary, but it's the food and the transportation and the medical help, and right. So because I know sometimes people have a tendency to compare that number to like what they pay for a mortgage, and there's going to be a massive difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
But can you just talk a little bit about the general things? I know every facility is a little bit different, but generally, sort of what is included in the monthly cost, so that our audience can have can set expectations.
So pretty much everything is included in the monthly cost, with the exception of like maybe a cable TV.
And toilet paper, presumably.
And the toilet paper they provide wouldn't be very good anyway, so buy your own.
Right, buy your own.
Buy your own. So generally speaking, it's going to include everything except the cable TV. So you're not paying your electric bill, you're not paying your property bill, you're not paying your water bill, you're not paying for food. You're getting 3 meals a day. You're not paying for transportation if you have to go to a doctor or to go out shopping with the group. You're not paying. Housekeeping is taken care of. So all of these general amenities are there for you. So you don't have to shovel snow. You can bring a car. If you have a car, bring it. They're going to shovel it off for you. You don't have to go out there and do that. They'll take care of that for you.
Because I think that sometimes that's what people really get scared about, right? Which is, I mean, I know I hear stories of sort of the adult children will take turns watching after mom and dad, or alternate days on when they spend at the parents' house help, right? Because I think sometimes people get scared at that number, and it can be a scary number. But like you just said, it's not just the rent or the mortgage; it includes everything else, right?
And the most important thing is quality of life and peace of mind. The daughter can be the daughter again. She doesn't have to be the caregiver. The son can be the son again. He doesn't have to be the caregiver. The husband or wife can become, again, that husband and wife,
right?
As opposed to losing their identity in the whole caregiver structure.
So, Mary, what would you say would be the opportune time or the best time for a family to start looking, right? Because obviously this is not something that people like to talk about. I'm sure you get a lot of resistance from the older family members because they want to stay at home and it's hard to move.
Right.
But when should families start to think about this?
Sooner than later is always better. I see, a lot of our clients are moving places within a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and that's fine. We're happy to help, and it's doable. But your choices are always more yours. They're always more vast when you're planning in advance. So when you start to see, at Christmas that mom is not quite herself, that's the time to start looking, or even before then would be ideal. And it should be a family conversation, because sometimes parents will start on their own because they don't want to be a burden to children. But it's important for the children to know what they want, because if there's an emergency situation, the adult child is the one who's going to be facilitating the move and kind of making the decision. So I always say it's better to have a plan. You never want to be in an emergency situation, and you can always get on a wait list or start attending events at a community and staying engaged with the place or places that you think you want to be eventually, because it will only make your transition that much smoother.
Right, because I would imagine that it's like having to move houses, right? I mean, I suppose if you had to move houses, you could theoretically do it in a week.
Yeah.
But you end up, so you get what you get. It might not be the best location, might not have the amenities you want, it might not, whatever, right? And so I would imagine that probably similar things can happen in this regard. If you say,
right.
I gotta move, I gotta get my mom into a place next week.
Right.
You might not get your top pick.
Right, and there are steps to be taken before moving to a community. You want to make sure you have a power of attorney in place and a healthcare proxy, and that you've seen your doctor. You will need a form from your doctor to move into a community. So there's a lot of things that, logistical things that need to be done, and it's much easier if you're set up in advance for those things, because during that week, not only are you packing and moving, and there's an emotional component, it's a really difficult thing to do, but now you have to get mom into the doctor, and oh my God, our power of attorney isn't up to date, and we don't have a healthcare proxy in place, and mom's not capable of making her own decision or whatever it is. So, we can help with a lot of those kind of more logistical or planning phases as well. We have a ton of resources that we work with.
Right. Because, getting back to the point of overwhelm you mentioned earlier, if you're trying to get your mom or dad into a place in a week, you're probably not thinking about this stuff, right? Because most families, I mean, we don't do this for a living. You do, but we don't.
Right.
The rest of us don't. And so we wouldn't know this, right? And then you don't want to have to find out last minute and then you're scrambling for all this stuff, right?
Right.
So John and Mary, so time for one final question, and just simply is, what is a good final tip that you would like to share with our audience? So Mary, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think that so often we see families who call us after they've tried to do this on their own. You wouldn't buy a house or sell a house typically without a real estate agent. So why not have a free expert to help you? It can only help, and it can only make your journey that much easier. You can call us even if you just have a question, even if you're early in the process. We both love what we do very much, and we're happy to help you with whatever it is. And so I would say, plan early and reach out for help. Don't try to go on the internet. Don't try to go it alone, and
Right. I mean, it's such a big decision, right?
It's a huge decision.
And what about you, John? A final tip for our audience?
We're here to relieve the stress because people have jobs, people have kids, people have things to do, and there could be caregiving at the same time. So we're here to take all of that stress off of the individuals so that you can go on and do what you need to do while we go out and find the perfect place for you. So we're basically matching the right person to the right place at the right time, and that's what people utilize us for, and we don't charge anything. We don't charge for this service.
Awesome. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us for this week's episode, or this particular episode of the Personal Finance Playbook. This is a conversation. I'm so glad to have Mary and John on because it's a conversation I'm thinking about with my mother, and I've seen families, friends, other relatives who have had to have these conversations, and makes for a lot of family infighting, a lot of really awkward holiday dinners, and it's just hard. And caregivers, I know, can just the amount of stress that they would have to carry and things in dealing with all this is just, it's unbelievable. So I hope you got some great information out of this as I did. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.